And then you have the veterans too, who are part of that movement for PTSD. Ibogaine is Dr. Nolan Williams from Stanford said it's the most amazing thing we have for PTSD. In his studies with veterans, Navy SEALs, it showed that after 30 days, the alleviation of PTSD, anxiety, depression was 85% or higher
Wow.
for PTSD, for it reversed, traumatic brain injury, which is a huge problem.
Yes.
And he proved that it actually reverses your brain age each session by, I think,
Wow.
1.7 years or something. He called it Benjamin buttoning the brain. So the neurocognitive abilities and the GDNF, it's called glial derived neurotrophic factor, which helps repair neurons, which helps um,
Plasticity.
plasticity, neuroplasticity, creating new behaviors, rewiring your brain is really incredible.
Welcome to Far Out with Faust, everybody. I am Faust Chicho, and today I am excited and honored to be joined by Talia Eisenberg. Let me tell you about Talia and the incredible and important work that she's been up to. She's a serial entrepreneur and the co-founder of Beyond, which is a San Francisco and Mexico-based company providing safe and effective psychedelic-assisted Ibogaine treatment for those suffering from trauma, addiction, and behavioral disorders. Her passion for supporting others in healing through Ibogaine is very personal. It was that treatment that catalyzed her recovery nearly 15 years ago, and it's what inspired her to open her retreat center in Cancun, where people can come to be safely and comfortably guided through recovery, transformation, and integration, very important. Her unwavering mission is to directly impact and help thousands of people, hopefully even more, to go on and heal and lead meaningful and purpose-driven lives. So Talia, thank you so much for beaming in. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So we've obviously already been talking, but I think maybe the best place to start is a little bit with your journey, if you don't mind, and how you came into your experience with this incredible treatment.
Okay, sure. So for starters, I came into the planet never feeling like I really belonged here, sort of like an alien. What are we doing here? Why? Maybe too conscious. And I think a lot of people can relate to that nowadays. Asking big questions at an early age, feeling an anxiety, a root anxiety. I think it's a very dense place here, and there's a lot of suffering, and I wasn't used to it. I also came into a family, my grandmother had survived Auschwitz, and I just remember as a kid her having these awful. We were very close. She was an incredible woman who overcame a lot at a very young age and watched many of my family members slaughtered and others around her, and survived at the age of 22, came to America with my grandfather. But, as a child, she'd have these intense nightmares where she was
Mm.
screaming. So and then, later I learned about epigenetics and how we carry this in our cells. My own father had his own challenges. So already growing up, there was this sense of intergenerational trauma. I grew up in Omaha, Nebraska. I felt very weird there. Also, it was pretty conservative, and our family was extremely liberal.
Mm.
And, long story short, it's not uncommon, but I was part of that wave that I had a routine dental procedure when I was 17, and I had already been dabbling in some drugs
Mm-hmm.
recreationally on weekends with my friends, and
I
was
know how that is.
subconsciously looking for something to take the edge off. And when I had this dental procedure, I felt normal for the first time from the Vicodin. And back then, probably almost 20 years ago, yeah, 20 years ago, um, the prescriptions were handed out like candy, even for dental procedures, because as we know, the kickbacks and what happens in the pharmaceutical industry related to these medications was there was a lot of dishonesty, even
Mm-hmm.
when you look at the inserts, they basically, like the tobacco industry said, this is not addictive. So, I was part of that wave, and I realized quickly I needed to get more, and I was buying it in the streets of New York City. I was already in college then, buying it off of people, I remember going, like, to very, obscure dental or doctor's offices in Midtown and just, like, through a slot in the door, telling the nurse in the front what you wanted and paying them, and you don't even see a doctor, and
Wow.
they would
Yeah.
just give you scripts. So I was part of that, and I soon realized, though, it was like a mental prison and I wanted to stop. I was unhappy. It wasn't the way. I had some vague recollection that I had done this before, that I was going to get out of it. I wasn't going to overdose and die, but I needed to go through this experience to
Mm.
somehow find something greater and free myself and maybe help others. And a friend introduced, I went, it's worth noting, I went to a number of these rehabs around the country, supposedly the best rehabs, very expensive.
Very
I'd
expensive.
go for 30, 90 days. And I realized that even when I left, I had that craving that I couldn't stop thinking about getting an opiate just to feel normal. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, even whether it's food, whether it's sex, whether it's drugs. It's like I had this, entity on my back that, the realm of the hungry ghost that was needed something to just feel normal, to fill that void of
Mhm.
anxiety and untreated trauma, really. And then a friend of mine told me that he had done Ibogaine, and he was a friend that I used to, go out with and party
Yeah.
with, and he was doing really great, and I ran into him in New York City, and he told me to do Ibogaine, that I had to go to Mexico. I flew to Mexico. The place I went to was, thank God it did save my life, but it was unequipped to provide therapeutic support,
Mm.
didn't have proper medical care. Ibogaine is risky from a cardiac perspective. So it's the one psychedelic where you really want to do it with trained medical
Mm.
professionals and proper, um, you know, you want
Supervision.
proper
Yeah.
supervision and also medical equipment, right? And
Mm.
this wasn't even a facility, didn't have that, but it worked, right? And I had a very intense awakening, if you want to call it that, and basically never touched an opiate, alcohol, or stimulant again. And that was more than 15 years ago. But
Wow.
through that journey, so I felt my brain, there's a sense that this is not uncommon. People feel, their receptors being repaired or their brain being healed. So I had the physiological healing of, and no craving, rapid detox. If you've ever seen somebody, I had been through opiate withdrawal countless times in 3 or 4 years. The desire had lifted, but also the sweating, the shaking, the
The
that had
physiological withdrawals. Yeah.
right, in 12 hours was eliminated, and for many, that's greatly reduced, and for some, they don't have it at all, so that was a miracle, and then the spiritual, psychological aspect was I saw that I don't wanna poison myself anymore. I saw my grandmother in Auschwitz, and I said, "Why am I creating my own Auschwitz?" I was able to I turned to somebody next to me who was sitting there, underground provider, and I said, "I am my own therapist. I'm asking myself, why am I doing this to myself? Why am I creating my own Holocaust? Why am
Mm.
I punishing myself?
Yeah.
I wanna do good in the world and help people and be purposeful here." So that at the age of 22 or 23, changed my life. And, I saw a number of other, the human condition and how we suffer throughout time, but we're all evolving eventually. We're pushing through and of visceral images of that. So that was very powerful for me. Fast forward many years later, and we started a center that I actually had a vision of during that first Ibogaine trip. I went and got my MBA. I've started a few small
Mhm.
startups, health startups, and today we started, more than 3 years ago now, we've started Beyond, which is a state of the art facility with, you know, multiple full-time physicians and many, many nurses and everything you would want, cold plunge therapy, somatic
Wow.
therapy, daily massage, clean food, everything you would need. Ibogaine is just one tool that we use. It's a very powerful tool that we use, whether you're struggling with chemical dependency, PTSD, traumatic brain injury. And then we also have a whole program for cognitive enhancement for people that are, just coming for personal growth. Um, so it's a full program. It's a minimum of 6 or 7 days, and most people stay for 10, and then some people who are, coming off of serious chemicals like fentanyl or
Yeah.
Suboxone could stay for 30 days. So, it's
Wow.
very customized and, yeah, it's pretty tremendous to see the transformations compared to the centers, rehabs I went to. The success rates are
Mm.
much greater, and the ability for people to find themselves again, that for sure is, happening at a much greater rate than traditional rehab centers.
Yeah. Oh, I have no doubt about that. I see the transformations and possibilities and reassessment of reality and people's understanding of what they're doing here on this planet, maybe what they've been doing and what they want to do, through psychedelics like ayahuasca. And that can be life changing and powerful. But I do understand that Ibogaine can be even more intense, which I've had some very, very intense ayahuasca experiences. So I'm sure that it's more intense in its own way. um, you know, uh, but ayahuasca can be extremely intense when it gets going.
Let's talk about that. I mean, I've worked in early recovery. I would go down with the Shipibos and do dieta once
Nice.
a year for about a month, the first 5 years of my recovery, along with things like AA, which you couldn't tell one group. The AA group didn't like the ayahuasca, and the ayahuasca didn't like the AA, but together they really the AA helped me actually integrate, and I didn't love all of it, but it
Right.
taught me how to meditate, it taught me how to look at my part, how to heal resentments, how to forgive. And then the ayahuasca really helped me heal underlying trauma after about a year
Mm.
after the Ibogaine. But if you want to compare ayahuasca to Ibogaine, I mean, Ibogaine lasts much longer in your system. It converts into something called noribogaine in your liver, which sticks around for up to 90 days and creates the neuroplasticity so you can create new habits. It's a natural antidepressant.
Wow.
You want to you want to do better for yourself on a daily level. You want to get up earlier and go for a run if that's your goal. You want to be more present for your children. The trouble for me with ayahuasca, I had incredible visions, and in ways, the visions maybe were deeper even than Ibogaine. In some
Yeah.
ways, you're further out because of the DMT.
Mm-hmm.
Ibogaine or Iboga is much more grounding. You're still very present. You know where you are. You know you're in a room. You know what your name is. You know you have support around you. You're looking more at your memories. Maybe it's based more on your past memories, and I think ayahuasca is sort of more ethereal in
Yeah.
ways. But I think it's harder to integrate for me at least and for others. You hear about people going to do ayahuasca a lot because you have these big visions, but it's hard to bring back to
So
earth.
hard.
Right? And I think with Ibogaine, because it's a root medicine, maybe because it's more grounding, maybe because of the neuroplasticity that sticks around for much longer than ayahuasca in your system, for weeks and weeks longer, you can, bring that knowledge home and, bring it into your daily life in an easier manner. So, I think they're both, and ayahuasca, I definitely have had past memories of
Oh
abuse
yeah.
leave
Yeah.
my body and trembling, and I wouldn't knock it at all. It's an incredible medicine, but very different, than Ibogaine and or Iboga. So, yeah, I think, people ask that a lot, "What's the difference
Yeah.
and why?"
No, you've cleared that you're like answering questions I haven't asked yet. So, and for me personally, so I appreciate it. Because I was very curious how, one experience may like literally compare to the other. You know, but kind of I'm just sitting here and I'm a little, it just boggles my mind how God, the universe, source, whatever your preferred name of this intelligence that we see, has provided everything on this planet for the human condition and the human being that we could want, and we're just beginning to really tap into and understand that and take advantage of what is here, and it just blows my mind how much healing nature can provide. And when you mix human ingenuity with Mother Nature, and God source, I don't think there's much you can't, accomplish. So I'm the reason why I was a little distant is because I'm just marveling at how incredible, like I know that ayahuasca came from these traditions in South America, but where Ibogaine did it have an African origin, right?
Correct. Yeah, ibogaine is an alkaloid that comes from iboga, Tabernath iboga, is a root found, in the bushes of, Gabon and other countries nearby, and it's been used by various traditions, including the Bwiti tradition, for thousands of years as a rite of passage, as a way to connect with ancestors, as a way to get answers, and it's used ceremonially, iboga, that is. Now, ibogaine is one alkaloid, and it's used more in clinical settings. It's more potent, it's easier to measure, it's very effective. Iboga hasn't been studied yet scientifically as much, but yeah, the tradition is very strong, and I think, we try to marry elements, spiritual elements on site
Mm,
without while respecting each person's path, whatever that
right.
is, their own personal belief system. And we try to, we have a fire ceremony. There's various other, aspects. We clear the room. The nurses are trained in mindfulness that are around. We also have coaches and guides. We have a Bwiti ceremonialist that actually, works on site. So if people want more of the traditional path, we can provide elements of that.
Nice.
But, yeah, there is a strong tradition, and we don't wanna be disconnected from we're very grateful here in the West, and we do work with an organization there in Gabon who makes sure that the medicine is sustainably sourced,
Mm,
that, a lot of the medicine is poached in these villages. Westerners have come, and so they make sure that, there's a way to give back and provide locally for those on the ground there, that it is not poached, that their culture can remain, that it will not be, mainstreamed like it's what's happening in South America with ayahuasca in ways as
yeah.
well. So that's important, I think, to respect where it comes from. But we are, Westerners who have Western minds. And part of my time studying in the Amazon, these shaman and ayahuasqueros would look at us in our group and say, God, you Westerners are holding so much energy in your head. We're not even used to it because we're so naturally in our bodies and present. Your
Mm,
problems all stem from just being too cerebral, basically. And that's where our modern disease comes from, right? Is the mind and our
yeah.
trauma and holding on to that. So we do need. My point is, we do need to, marry these cultures with the West if we
Yes.
are to use these medicines while respecting where they come from, without taking everything, from them, while having a dialogue with those on the ground and these cultures there for how can we learn from you and how can we serve you as well.
Yeah. Eh, You know, nobody gets out unscathed in this life. I don't, I really, I believe that's part of the experience. I don't care if, where you were raised and to how much affluence, or poverty. There's going to be trauma, and if you don't get it in this life, chances are you came in with it, from your past life, or even from your birthing experience from the womb. I think it all has a contribution because it's the only thing that makes sense to me. You know what I mean? I see, I have children, and one of them has certain fears that I know that they have not. Those fears do not come from any conditioning he received in this life. He did not have my upbringing. So I'm just like, wow, where that lives in his body, literally. He goes to do things in his body. He's like, even though his willpower is trying to exert itself. And I'm like, it just reminds me how powerful ancestral trauma and that trauma that kind of carries into our DNA is. And so this treatment is, I think, needs a lot more publicity. You're seeing a lot of publicity right now with MAPS and with psilocybin and with MDMA, and while they are making leeway and progress, they're doing it at a pace which is going to match probably the pharmaceuticals industry's ability to, stay on that, patent it, and be part of the spoils. That's usually the way regulation goes in America, sadly. But like ayahuasca, I would love to see ibogaine start to really permeate people. There's a large swath of people, but not just in the United States, but across the world, who are looking for this kind of healing. And so, I when I heard about you, I was, even though I know the algorithms will not be kind to our discussion, I had to have the conversation anyway because it's so important to have, and I know it will reach the people whose ears, who are, the algorithms are a pain in the butt, especially when you're talking about controversial things. But they also, I believe, work in tandem with the universe. Like there's this digital connection that happens somehow. Because it's part of human consciousness in many ways. So
Yes,
I
because love is bigger than technology and censorship and fear. So I believe that's
absolutely,
true as well. And it's an
yeah,
important discussion to have. And we do see that Ibogaine is making headway in America. Like, last year we were part of the Kentucky opiate abatement funding. The question was, how do we allocate uh, pharmaceutical money won from makers of OxyContin and Walgreens and par partially as a way to give back to those that were harmed. So many people, there's hundreds of millions of dollars in many, many states for this. And that's a big deal. Kentucky was the first. It didn't work. The Opioid Abatement Fund ultimately, after months and months of discussion and testimony, which, people can watch, we can link to that, basically struck it down because the attorney general, um, you know, the powers that be, of course, are funded by pharmaceutical Suboxone and, didn't
wow,
wanna see it happen. But then we have had after that, that was an incredible moment because other states then came forward and said, "Look, we have other politicians, policymakers, we have hundreds of millions in abatement funding in this state, in this state, in this state. Let's seriously talk about ibogaine research." So that's now happening.
nice,
So that's very exciting. That happens even though it wasn't successful in Kentucky. I believe it could be, and then you have the veterans too who are part of that movement for PTSD. Ibogaine is Dr. Nolan Williams from Stanford said it's the most amazing thing we have for PTSD. In his studies with veterans, Navy SEALs, it showed that after 30 days, the alleviation of PTSD, anxiety, depression was 85% or higher
wow,
for PTSD, for it reversed, traumatic brain injury, which is a huge problem.
yes,
And he proved that it actually reverses your brain age each session by, I think,
wow,
1.7 years or something. He called it Benjamin buttoning the brain. So the neurocognitive abilities and the GDNF, it's called glial derived neurotrophic factor, which helps repair neurons, which helps um,
plasticity,
plasticity, neuroplasticity, creating new behaviors, rewiring your brain is really incredible.
yeah,
And of course, it also takes, doing the work afterwards and integration support. It is not a magic bullet, but my point is like what happened in Kentucky and what's happening in other states on a political level, and you have, people like Bobby RFK coming out and saying,
hmm,
"Let's reclassify psychedelics. Let's expand the federal research budget." Um, and then you have, institutions like Stanford that are publishing studies showing how beneficial this is compared to pharmaceuticals. It is
mm,
a very exciting time for Ibogaine. I say like Ibogaine's been like the ugly stepchild in the closet for many
hmm,
years. It's the most obscure psychedelic, and that's for many reasons. Um, but now it is becoming more well known, and we're seeing, on site where we're very busy. We have 20 rooms
nice,
and we are busier than ever, and more people are also coming for personal growth and cognitive enhancements, not just for addiction or trauma. So there is a growing demand and I think a knowing that this is something that you can do and it has pretty profound results after just one session that continue to last. And maybe worth linking to is um, a researcher, Dr. Gould Dolan from University of Berkeley, who is famous for working with octopuses and neuroplasticity. She
Mm,
showed the critical period, which means the period of learning versus all the other psychedelics. For Ibogaine, ketamine, I think, is 1 week, ayahuasca is a little longer, MDMA a little longer, but for Ibogaine is up to 3 months. And
wow.
that also is a major study showing that, like, yes, it is more expensive to do. Yes, it's more timely, but its effects are longer lasting and more profound.
So so like I'm honestly interested, and I have been interested, not just because I struggled with addiction, for years, but
I didn't know that.
I understand human nature and how we're wired. We're wired to be addicted to things. I mean, it's just we have a routine, and every day it's kind of, we get up, we have coffee. People don't realize they're doing the same things they did yesterday.
Dopamine, dopamine,
So
dopamine. Yeah.
exactly,
Dopamine nation. Yes.
we're very driven by it, and they take advantage of that in every way, in ways people don't even understand. And they screw with people's heads and health, and then you put that on top of what's already happened to them, and it's a recipe for on and off misery for the rest of your life. And I'm interested in this because I heard you talk about how you went first and you had this, and it was very effective. You were able to, even in the conditions that you experienced this first in, you were able to take it, integrate, and use it to succeed in never picking up, never touching an opiate again. So that speaks to the power of this medicine, and that's without all the fixings that your center provides, which I've heard you talk about become very vital, when you're in this process, and so, I don't want to downplay that, but also, where was I going with that? Like, so,
So these medicines, let me hop in. I don't want to cut you off.
please.
I think it teaches you, and the biggest truth here on the planet is that we have free will. We have the power to choose. Once you realize the system that you're working in and what's been ascribed to you, instead of life coming to at you and you being a victim of
Hmm.
life, you become aware and conscious and empowered. So you say, no, 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 I'm not going to do that thing again. I'm not going to reach for that phone and yell at that person or whatever. I'm not going to reach for that food that
Yeah.
makes me feel like shit. I'm not going to reach for that drug. I'm going to do things differently from now on. And that's where the personal empowerment comes in. And I think that's one of the biggest falsehoods on earth, right? Is this lack of free will. And that's what this medicine and these other medicines can give you, right? Is the power of choice,
Yeah.
and that's up to the individual how they want to use it, right?
Yeah.
And some people choose to go back. They can't, they don't, they're not ready. They're not ready to deal with the challenges. They're not ready to make changes in their, many people's marriages ends, right? And that's
Hmm.
tough. You have children, but
Yep.
they've outgrown their partner and their partner's not willing to do their own inner
Right.
work, but some people choose to stay in that marriage. And maybe because of that, they eventually go back and, but they did have a choice, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So for someone like me, I have this incessant need to uncover and find out more about myself and why I'm programmed the way I'm programmed, so that I can make as much as my experience conscious and a choice, instead of, a very, very well and deeply programmed subroutine kind of, that comes from an experience, that I've long since forgotten about, or maybe even never known about in this life. And like, so I'm interested in it because I even heard you say that like, often we have these, we have a great big hole in our hearts, and it's from trauma. It's from childhood. It's from this, some kind of trauma most of the time. At least that's my experience. And I heard you say that you went and did it again for codependency. And I was like, wow. Now, people don't understand codependency. You can, there's anonymous just for codependency. It's a real thing. It's a real problem for people all over the world, and when they realize they can get help for it, a lot of them seek, um, you know, recovery programs. So I was like, wow. So this does work for because a lot of times we get through one thing and it's like, oh wait, well look, there's another thing. I didn't realize that one was behind this one. And so, what would you say for me, for someone like me who's really interested in self, optimization, betterment, and more and more consciousness, more and more connection with my purpose, with myself, with my heart, like, but I don't like, I would be hesitant to come because I've heard you talk about some of the people that come to you guys, are in pretty dire straits, and like, I don't know. I'm like hesitant because I'm like, I don't want to line up with a bunch of people who are, scratching themselves and like, this is it for them. It's this or God knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, we have very high functioning people coming who are not coming for addiction issues, who want to, they have achieved a lot and they're pretty happy and they've done a lot of personal growth work.
Yeah.
And they want to feel the natural benefits, the neuroplasticity. They want to climb Everest. We
Yeah.
have some pretty, incredible athletes and tech CEOs and just normal people who may want to
Awesome.
write a book that they've been trying to write for years and are blocked in ways, and have a great normal job and a great family and all of that.
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, I think it helps people, yeah, it makes you more joyful, it makes you more aware, more present. You know, it's very rare to hear somebody leave and say that was not worth it.
Right.
Most people leave and they're like, wow, or even months later, God, I've healed relationships with my family that I thought I couldn't, or I've
Yeah.
been able to start this new. I spoke to a woman today who's started this new, health app in the last couple months since she left. She's based in New York City.
Right.
She's a DJ, and didn't wanna do that anymore. She's in her late 30s and now is working on a project for mental health, and has a lot of energy. It gives you energy and focus and, yeah, it connects you to your higher self, and that's different for each person. What is your soul's purpose? Why did you come here? We're here for a very short amount of time,
Hmm.
and often we get bogged down with life challenges and false beliefs about ourselves. Typically, unworthiness, right?
Yeah.
Prevents us from from achieving what we came here to achieve or being in a more loving, heart-based relationship with ourselves, with our kids. It starts with ourselves,
That's
our
right.
partners. And this does help with that, definitely. So I would say I see many people coming and using it. They have the same concerns. Am I going to be with, many people who have
Yeah.
fentanyl problems? Or by the end of the week, like they don't really care. It cuts through
Right.
humanity. But of course, everyone's at a different place, and on the spectrum. So, but that tends not to be an issue. And, you know, wherever
Awesome.
people are, we have workshops and workbooks and, many different classes for development. So it just depends what you want to work on. And for me, yeah, codependency. Like, why am I giving myself away and making for me, it was a series of men, making them God essentially and
Right.
losing myself. Why can't I stand up for myself in these ways? Or, and I was able to see at the end, like, okay, this is why I'm doing it. And I'm not going to do that anymore.
Yeah.
And that was very helpful. And I've shifted out of that. It's also shown me, it helped me after I had a child a few years ago just to get back to baseline, like, and balance me. Was able to get off SSRIs after a year, and
Wow.
I wasn't I was very high functioning and for the most part doing okay, but I had some postpartum stuff. So, yeah, it meets people where they are, I would say, and there's many benefits to it.
And it's funny because yeah, just let's not try not to go off on too much of a tangent, but when people go to an ayahuasca ceremony or a plant ceremony, especially their first time, they're often at times sitting in the dark, being like, I have no, like, what did I fucking pay? What did I just pay for? Like, why everyone is like throwing up and I'm sitting here in the dark and this really sucks, like because that can, like, the first night particularly you do ayahuasca, obviously you probably remember, it's like, it can be very subtle. Not for everyone, but for some people they can literally just be sitting there and the medicine's like, sorry, can't get through, like
Yeah,
it does.
knock, knock. Why can't I get into your consciousness? Well, you're very closed off. Yeah. For
Yeah.
me, the first night was terrifying. I was like, what is going I had a crazy experience,
Wow.
but lots of purging and yeah, just a lot of darkness. And then it
Yeah.
took, many, many times to start getting to a lighter consciousness. But yeah, a lot of so this is very individualized. It's in a clinical setting. It is you're either with yourself or one other person. There's a medical team around you. I mean,
Hmm.
the environment is it doesn't feel too clinical. You have on an eye mask and you're listening to noise canceling headphones and beautiful music.
Okay.
But it is, a longer experience. It's multiple hours and you
Like
don't
six,
have
7, 8 hours.
well, more like 10 or
Oh, okay.
12. It's about 4 hours, though, of vision. It depends how fast people metabolize.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it's on average, it's about 4 hours of visions, and the remaining time is insights into what can I do to make
Hmm.
changes or insights into your past. And, you're looking at it is a memory medicine more than other psychedelics or medicines. It does sort of bring up,
Wow.
they say like a movie of your life. I feel that we get bogged down because we're carrying past memories with us.
Yeah.
And those memories contribute to the present moment. We make assumptions and judgments based on our past experiences. And what if you could clear the energy of those past experiences, still retain the memory and the wisdom, um, but not carry the heaviness with you, and maybe even elevate some of the more positive memories. So yeah, like some
Or
people
negative,
can or
or
negative, yeah.
yeah.
Some people compare Ibogaine to, like let's think about how we could be hard drives and we have multiple windows open and it's hard to the computer stops working so quickly, right? You can't
Hmm.
press buttons or the mouse or whatever, and it sort of goes through and can look at each memory or each window, learn from it, and then put it away, and the heaviness of that memory isn't lingering around in each present moment, and after Ibogaine, people report that they feel just this deep sense of inner peace. You don't have the intruding thoughts of maybe negativity, and,
Hmm.
that can last for a while. There's things that you can do to help that last for a while, and that's part of what we teach on site, but
It's amazing. And the practice that you come into, I see people attend these different ceremonies and then they go right back into their life. They go right back into their routine. They may have had an incredible and profound experience, but did they really integrate, in any way that was conscious and complementary to their experience? And it's a big thing. And I think, the fact that this medicine really lends itself to that. And I mean, I'm fascinated with it and very interested, and in all likelihood, will venture to try it sometime in the next couple of years because it's certainly directly like online with the path that I've taken and the practice I've come into, and I understand everything you're saying about what happens when every decision that you make, unbeknownst to you, is based on your past shitty experience, and you're going about your day and you don't realize how wired you are to repeat the same experiences that you've had, and how do you get past that? You got to reprogram, and to do that, you got to get into the inner software. You're not going to do it from the external, and that's a really hard thing for people to realize and then take responsibility for, because then it becomes about, okay, now what are you going to do about it? Like, and that's the problem with some talk therapies. It's like, okay, are you just going to talk about the trauma? Because
yeah.
you're not going to heal.
Yeah, you
Like,
need body-based healing, right? The intellect, I've been to some of the best therapists in the world for years, yeah, but to keep going in circles, we know what happened during our childhood, but how do we actually change it? And then that gets interesting if you can work through the pain of, okay, this is what happened, and this is why I do this now, or I'm stuck in this. If you
mm,
can see that I'm stuck in this cycle of thought, I mean, in some sense, we're all addicts, right? We're addicted
Yeah.
to our thought patterns for sure. There's a spectrum of addiction, but it starts with our thoughts, and we go down these loopholes and then we act on our thoughts. So if you can actually see that, and that's painful to recognize and painful to realize you can't get out of this behavior or this thought loop
Mm.
about this thing or a person, but then it becomes fun and you can play and say, okay, how do I want to actually change that? Who do I want to become? What thought loop do I want to develop?
Yeah.
And then you change your reality. And yeah, you're just a much more present and joyful person because of it. So
Yep.
you can flip that into play and a new state of beginning. And yeah, that's very inspiring.
Yes.
And you can do that with other people, that are also doing the work as well, which is why we have like a weekly alumni program virtually that's free, always
Nice.
ongoing, and many other offerings similar. But yeah, it does people do stay with us for multiple days after the Ibogaine, and they are working specifically on what do I want to change in my life, and what thoughts do I want to change? What behaviors could I change? What does my life look like now? What am I going to do the Monday I get home, the Tuesday I get home?
Right.
And how I'm gonna work everyone's assigned a coach, right? Before they come and after they leave, they continue working with the same coach who's worked with Ibogaine and is going to help them achieve their goals. So they have personal support in that way as well, and that's
That's
an
amazing.
important aspect, yeah.
Very
So,
important. Yeah.
very important, yeah.
The ayahuasca practitioners should take a page from that. That would change the dynamic of that as well. Not that one's got a lot of momentum and it's doing fine, but I think it would be even more effective if they had. And some of them are starting to offer that. But let's go a little far out, my friend. So everybody who gets into just researching and studying these different incredible gifts that Mother Nature has to offer. They learn about DMT, and sometimes they even hear Joe Rogan talk about the DMT, the elves, and what are they called? The machine elves, and
Yeah.
all these funky names for these archetypes, which are experienced by people who go through this journey. And the fact that people are going through this experience and coming up against and seeing the same kind of archetypes speaks to not only how connected we all are, but also the fact that there is something on the other side of this veil that is programmed and intelligent, and while it does change for each person, there are elements that are the same, and you can't, it's a quote hallucinogen. So are people dreaming the same dream? And I'm wondering, like, does Ibogaine have those kind of elements? And have you ever had encounters with you know um, spirits, or let's say celestial energies and different entities in that regard, that were maybe there to help, or you know be part of that experience?
So that's really interesting. I want to share that of course, like we only see a fraction of what is going on, right? We're in a very dense reality here. And there's certainly, without a doubt, life. And I s- often just at this point, I have dreams and I feel things. And with ayahuasca, I've had alien encounters and
Yeah.
Morse code and but related to Ibogaine or Iboga, there's been many reports that people have consumed Ibogaine not knowing that it's an African originated medicine, and they see an African guide
Wow.
across the board. So that tells us that certainly there are guides associated with it, and it connects you. And many people have been connected to their ancestors as well from the other side. I've had experiences too where I've seen people see spirits in different ways. I believe their minds ascribe what they're comfortable with. With the machine elves, I know people, that's interesting
Yeah.
because across the board people see these, but maybe they're wearing sometimes clothing that maybe somebody is used to, whereas somebody else will just see a spirit energy. But related to African spirits, people have seen African spirits without knowing that it comes from
Wow.
Africa. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
very interesting. And I mean, I'm sure. the experience may be as unique for the individual, as other psychedelic experiences, which means that some people could be like, you know, having this crazy like interaction with, a past self, or a distant relative, and other people could be, really just plugging through something that's very internal. So
Some some people come to us just because they, they're healthy, normal in many ways, but they've had a loss recently,
hmm,
and of all the psychedelics, I would say it is the best to reconnect, find closure with those on the other side.
hmm,
Given
good to
the
know.
maybe given the African tradition, and we all come from Africa,
Yeah,
and it in many ways, it does reconnect. I think it heals the family lineage front and back. Well, I think ayahuasca does that as well, and these
yeah,
other medicines, but Ibogaine or Iboga uniquely does that. I also think it evolves your spirit in many ways, almost so you don't have to come back multiple lifetimes to learn. It leapfrogs you, I would say.
wow,
Um, but yeah, we do know that there's a lot more out there, and these medicines can show you that, that's for sure.
yeah. That's a powerful statement you just made. The experience of and belief that this medicine can really evolve your spirit, which is what you actually are. You're not this, flesh and blood, but you have the joy and burden of walking around in it. But at the same time, obviously this is a belief of mine, but we all are spiritual, spirit by nature.
We're spirit in body. Yeah,
Yeah.
embodied spirits, that's right, and that's something that I have seen working with this medicine is where we all come from the same source, right? And then we're dropped into this plane perhaps, or our spirits, reincarnate in various bodies, but yeah, the spirit is everlasting. And that's the greatest, I think that is the greatest suffering here, right? We think that we're separate. That's
Yep.
where all of our pain comes from. And I,
Oh
I like
yeah.
to say, like, our first traumatic experience is birth, right? Because we're separated from the womb where we are one. It's cozy, and we're in some sense all trying to get back to that oneness, but we get to come here and experience this illusion of separation, and we have these technologies like meditation, it doesn't have to be psychedelics or
Right.
psychedelic, that help us remember, or things like 5-meo DMT that remind us of where we come from pre-birth and where we're going after death in this
Mm.
body, to see the beyond the veil and the illusion that exists here. So it's a beautiful gift to be a human in a way. I mean, I love that we can create here.
Yeah.
Everything in a sense is backwards here, right? We think we're
Yes.
separate. We think, the level of loneliness is real, right? But we also get to create in these bodies and create in the 3D and build things and, companies
Yeah.
and be of service if we want to, and also make errors and learn from those errors
Hmm.
um I think that's why I liked opiates so much, just to bring it back, because you feel that sense. It's a false, right? It's not
Yeah.
real, but you feel that false sense of oneness. And then I get to learn that I can actually feel that oneness on a daily basis through these
Yeah.
processes and activities that I've learned to reprogram for myself. So
That's
we are
beautiful.
one, but we're in these separate bodies here, and
Right.
we can
That's the
definitely,
paradox.
and it's so simple too, right? We can ask for help, and there are guides that are here,
That's right.
and we just have to remember to say, "Hey, I need help. Show up for me." And maybe it takes a couple hours or a couple days because it doesn't happen as fast as we would like it to, but the signs are usually there if you keep an eye
Yeah.
out for us. And
And
and these yeah, these
go ahead.
medicines help keep us humble and remember that the problems occur when we think we're in charge, right? We begin playing God, but if we can step back and remember that we're not ultimately in charge, that we have a higher self. We are God embodied, but we
Hmm.
have a lowercase self, the ego, that sometimes thinks we're in charge, and then the magic stops. So if we can just pull back and surrender and ask for signs, it's a more feminine way of being, which is
Yeah.
we've over indexed, I think, on the,
Just a little.
masculine
Just a little.
viewing in our society. Not that, we should all contain both masculine and feminine,
Yeah.
and I certainly for much of my life was more masculine. Now I'm trying to be, more allowing, more receptive,
Yeah.
more observant and watching. But how great is it to know that we have support all the time? We might not be able to see it, but it's there, and the proof is there if we just ask and watch for
Yes.
it.
I
Yeah.
tell people, maybe every day, like if you simply close your eyes and take a moment and breathe and ask your angels and your guides for help. They're waiting for an invitation. They love invitations. They're always there anyway, but you can invoke them, and you could go so far as to, use your divine right to command them, so to speak, and we have that capacity, and they're always there. That's their job in a real way, I believe. And I tell people and encourage people all the time, like, even when you feel like you're alone, and your tendency is to isolate and run from this, try something different, turn and face it, and ask for help. Ask for help from your guides, ask for help from those who love you, because they're waiting to help you. It's so important. And that's the
Yes.
part of the reprogramming.
That is part of the reprogramming, and that's what these medicines could teach you, how to work better with those guides, or if you don't wanna call them guides, your higher self or nature or whatever it is, or love. Um, yeah, I think of them like waiting with a notepad. They're bored. We're not asking enough of them.
Right.
They need a laundry list, like, "Hey, can you help me with this? Can you help me with this?"
Absolutely.
They want to, and, sometimes we just think we're not worthy enough, and we don't deserve it, and
Mm.
I think the lights turn on after working with something like Iboga or Ibogaine, and as people remember, "Oh, yeah, this is why I came here." They remember, they reconnect to their own soul, and they want to, rely more and
Yes.
just feel into that. So
And what you said about unworthiness, this is, I would call it an epidemic. But I mean, because of the inversion of the nature of reality and this material, the material philosophy and the scarcity mindset that is programmed into particularly Western, I mean, almost every quote civilized, society where the food's under lock and key, you have this thinking. It's prevalent, and it's not an accident, but it is backwards. It is the opposite, of how things work, what we are, what we perceive, and that's where these feelings of unworthiness come from, and that's the biggest, block to self love, is like this deep seated belief that you were born screwed up. I mean, original sin. Talk about the most ridiculous concept ever spoken aloud. The baby is dirty. I'm like, wait, what? How can there be something less dirty than a
it's so
than a
sad.
baby?
That was
And they're like,
misconstrued by
they're
the
literally
church.
exercising the baby. I mean, that's basically what a baptism is. And I'm like, what do we need to do this?
Yeah, the baby's perfect. Yeah, the baby's born perfect. I mean, that's, I just had a baby a few months ago, and I don't know why, but
Congratulations.
thank you so much. This baby girl came, and I had these, visions and realizations that I needed to read Mary Magdalene, like the original Nag Hammadi that was discovered in
Wow.
Egypt, the original scriptures that were basically hidden by the church, right?
Yeah.
All the scriptures now are popular were written 100 or 200, 300 years after Jesus. So imagine how the orally that was passed down and how it was
Right.
changed. And if you read the original texts and what Jesus was trying to preach, it was really just about love. There was no
Yeah.
sin at
No.
all.
Or
And this was,
hell,
of
or,
course, yeah,
you know,
created by the church to keep people enslaved, and
yep.
it's just very sad what has happened here, and how that unworthiness has trickled into society, and how capitalism and big ag and big
Hmm.
pharma and the powers that be have taken advantage of this idea. And maybe that's what we're here for, to, we forget everything when we're born,
Yeah.
and we slowly, if we're lucky, we come to remember, like, okay, this is actually false. I am worthy, and I'm just here for a moment, and I'm here to learn. I'm going to make the most of it. For me, knowing that we have another place to go to after this that is very love-based and the opposite of
Yeah.
this, I can hang here for a little bit.
Right.
It's when in the beginning periods of the first 20, 25 years when I thought this was all there is,
Right.
that's when I felt doomed, and the drugs were just a symptom of that, or the food. I was bulimic also. I was turning to
Wow.
these things outside because I thought that this, if anyone believes that this is all it, God, get me out
Yeah.
of here,
It's so
right?
depressing. Yeah.
But if you
And that's
know
what they
that we're
want you to
just
believe, you know? That's
yeah, exactly. If you know that we're just here for a moment and we're here to learn and maybe reconnect with past people we've been with in past lives in these forms together, we get to have sex with somebody we love in a
it's
physical
amazing.
form. That's amazing. We can't do that in other realms, right?
No.
So if you know, if you anchor your mind to that, or you orient your mind to that idea, you can actually have a really good time here. But if you believe that this is it, it's very depressing and you feel doomed.
Yeah.
So I love and I advocate for people, and now hundreds and hundreds of clients that come through, to look for where the magic is in their life. Where is this truth in their life?
Hmm.
To try and remember that this is not all there is, and to look for proof of that on a daily basis in
Yeah.
each moment, and to really try and lean into people, look them in the eyes, and try and figure out what makes them feel alive, and listen for that, and listen to that in yourself. And then it's okay. You can be here and you're reprogramming yourself to a new mind state.
Yeah. A new existence, a new reality. Because as you change the internal experience, everything external changes. This is anyone who has gone down this road will tell you, you can't change the world until you change it. You got to change yourself, then you'll change your experience in the world. And the way people interact with you and the situations that arise, it all comes from you. You just don't know it,
You're a
and that's the
giant
most
mirror. We live in a
exactly.
simulation. That's something that I learned on ketamine, basically, too, that it's all simulated. What we put out comes back to us.
Yes. Amazing
Yeah, that's
how
amazing.
that is. Talia, tell everyone where they can learn more about this incredible treatment and medicine, and how can they, keep up or maybe receive an email about what's going on, and keep up with the center and your
Very
work.
simple. So beyond.us, no Y, BEOND.us. If people are interested, they can sign up for a complimentary call with one of our experts. It's very easy to book a call, a brief call, no problem. We also have Instagram, we have YouTube, we have TikTok. And through those social media platforms, you can get a good look at the site, the staff, the kinds of people that come through. We're very transparent. Information about pricing is on the website. We do have some scholarship programs. We believe accessibility is very important. We also are launching a veterans program right now. We just had
Nice.
cohort 0 last week, and that's no fee for veterans and first responders. We believe that's very important as well. But yeah, you can find us. We're fairly accessible,
Awesome.
so
You should invite Sean Ryan on to your center.
I
Like,
would
even if
love
he
that.
just Sean Ryan is a podcaster, but he was a Navy SEAL, or was he a Ranger? He was Special Forces, and then he was a CIA contractor, and he's obviously extricated himself from the government and the armed forces, and he was pretty deep in the shit in Afghanistan, and like he's got buddies who are still over there, and like he's friends with snipers, and it's but he has an incredible following, and a great podcast. And the fact that he has this strong military background, he gets colonels on, he gets people who are in government programs with the military on, and but he's also an advocate, obviously, for veterans, and he's struggled himself with PTSD from his experiences. And I just think that if he ever came out to experience it, he would probably do a podcast with you, or because his audience, he has such a wide military audience, like a lot, like an incredible amount, and that would be awesome for this to reach them. So I just thought, it just occurred to me, like, it is something that he might maybe try. But
I
yeah,
think
Sean
he
Ryan, his
has,
name is.
actually. He has.
Oh, really? Oh, he has.
Yeah.
No kidding. I had no idea. So
Maybe we
you
could
so
link to that. That would be great.
you know who he is, and
I
he's
know who he is, and he has done Ibogaine, and there's information about it online. He talks about it.
wow.
Yes.
I guess Well, maybe I knew that. I don't know. Maybe
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 or
the
not.
thought wasn't mine.
We can
Um,
we
um,
can share we can share that link if you'd
that's
like.
cool. That's cool.
Yes.
Talia, thank you so much for your time, for everything you're doing. It's so important. It's been extremely educational for me, and I'm sure everyone who's listening. If you're listening at home or watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed this podcast. Please leave us a comment, and if you're listening on Audible, if you enjoyed the podcast and you think that it's something other people should listen to, drop a review and 5 stars, because we will have an uphill battle with the algorithms as it is because of the nature of this topic and the strong, long arm of big tech and big pharma. So we need all the help we can get. So please share this. If it may reach someone's ears who truly has the loved one who needs it. So thank you so much. Talia, God bless you. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
You take
Appreciate it.
care.
Take care.